The morning sun spilled through the first-class cabin of Flight 418, casting a warm glow over plush seats as Amara Johnson settled into 2A. Her modest carry-on was tucked neatly overhead, her demeanor calm but observant. To the crew of the Chicago to Seattle flight, she was just another black woman, an anomaly in their vision of premium passengers. Veteran flight attendant Susan Reynolds, with 20 years of service, offered sparkling wine to suited businessmen while handing Amara only a plastic cup of water. Susan's subtle smirk and dismissive tone betrayed her assumptions, unaware she was making the gravest error of her career. The cold sandwich, the muttered slights, the ignored requests Susan thought Amara would endure quietly, like others before her. But hidden in Amara's jacket was a federal badge, and her worn leather notebook captured every misstep with chilling precision. They had no idea they'd crossed an undercover FAA inspector with the authority to ground not just a flight attendant, but an entire airline. As the plane soared to 35,000 feet, the stage was set for a confrontation that would ripple through the skies. The crew gathered for their pre-flight briefing in the dim light of O'Hare's terminal, the cabin gleaming with fresh polish. Lead purser Janet Klein's voice was sharp. Today's flight is packed with VIPSA tech mogul, a TV star, a congressman's aide, and the Thompsons, our platinum regulars. Let's make it flawless. Susan, 45, nodded, her Navy uniform crisp, her confidence unshaken by years of catering to the elite. She prided herself on knowing every passenger's preferences, from coffee strength to seat adjustments. "I've got first class," she said, glancing at the rookie attendant, Emily, who looked eager but nervous. As boarding began, Susan greeted passengers with a polished smile. "Welcome aboard," she said, her warmth reserved for those she deemed worthy. Tech mogul David Pierce brushed past, phone glued to his ear. The Thompsons, an elderly couple, shuffled to 1A and 1B, thanking Susan warmly. Actor Ryan Caldwell sauntered in, sunglasses on, followed by the aide, Michael Chun, clutching a locked briefcase. Then came Amara, early 30s, in a simple blazer and slacks, her natural hair neatly pulled back. "Good morning," she said, her voice steady. "Seat 2A. Susan's smile flickered. She scanned Amara's boarding pass, noting the first-class assignment with a raised eyebrow. "Right this way," she said coolly, her tone laced with skepticism. Amara stowed her bag and settled in, her eyes already scanning the cabin. Susan whispered to Emily, "Probably an upgrade. Or someone's assistant." As service began, Susan offered champagne to David, mimosas to the Thompsons, but to Amara, only a curt, "Water." Amara met her gaze. "What are the options?" Susan's lips tightened. "I'll let you know later," she snapped, moving on. Amara opened her notebook, jotting down the time, the interaction, and minor safety violations: a sticky tray table, a smudged seatbelt. Susan leaned toward Emily, muttering, "They let anyone in first class now." Emily hesitated but stayed silent. Captain Mark Evans glanced back from the cockpit, his eyes lingering on Amara before he returned to his duties. She noted his look, adding it to her log. As the flight climbed, Susan served gourmet meals to first-class steaming plates of salmon and roasted vegetables. But Amara's tray held a stale roll with green speckles, a bruised pear, and tepid water. She lifted the cover, sniffed the moldy bread, and documented it, her face unreadable. Across the aisle, Margaret Thompson, the elderly matriarch, leaned over. "Is everything okay, dear?" she asked gently. "First time in first class." Amara smiled. "Just observing, ma'am." "Thank you." Susan overheard, rolling her eyes as she fawned over Ryan's meal preferences. When David complained his steak was overcooked, Susan rushed to replace it, ignoring Amara entirely. Emily, noticing the discrepancy, looked troubled but said nothing. Ryan, the actor, spoke up. "Her meal looks like garbage." "Mine's perfect." "She should complain." Amara replied calmly. "I'm noting everything." "Thank you." Light turbulence rattled the cabin, and Amara tested her seat belt. It failed to lock properly. She wrote it down. First Officer Daniel Carter passed by, their eyes meeting briefly in what seemed like mutual recognition. Susan, catching the exchange, bumped Amara's elbow while passing, causing her pen to skid. "Oops, turbulence," she said with a smirk. Amara didn't flinch, turning to a fresh page. When Susan snatched her untouched tray, muttering, "This isn't a hotel," Amara responded evenly. "Your service is teaching me a lot." Susan scoffed, whispering to Emily, "She doesn't belong here." Emily's discomfort grew, and she slipped Amara a proper meal tray, whispering, "I'm so sorry." Mid-flight, tension spiked when Henry Thompson clutched his chest, gasping. Amara was at his side in seconds, checking his pulse with practiced ease. "Sir, can you squeeze my hand?" she asked, loosening his tie. Susan arrived, flustered. "Back to your seat," she barked. Amara ignored her, directing, "He needs water and the medical kit." Now, her authority silenced Susan, who fetched the kit. Amara administered Henry's medication, stabilizing him as passengers watched in awe. Margaret gripped her hand. "Are you a doctor?" "I have medical training," Amara said simply, returning to her seat to note the crew's delayed response. Susan's composure cracked, her movements jerky, her smile forced. She avoided Amara, skipping her during drink rounds. David spoke up sharply. "You're ignoring her again." Margaret added, "It's blatant." Ryan held up his phone, filming. "Got the moldy food on video." Amara requested the purser, but Susan snapped, "She's busy." Amara nodded, noting it. Using the satellite phone, she entered a secure code. Authorization Bravo 529. Report in motion. Ground team, prepare. First Officer Carter approached, whispering, "Everything okay, ma'am?" Amara replied, "Multiple violations documented. Preserve all logs." He nodded, alerting Captain Evans. As descent began, Susan's panic surfaced. She leaned over Amara, hissing, "I'll make sure you never fly first class again." Amara met her gaze. "We'll see who flies again." The cabin held its breath. At 10,000 feet, Captain Evans announced, "With permission, a passenger has a statement." Amara stood, taking the intercom. "I'm Amara Johnson, FAA inspector. This flight was an undercover compliance check. All violations discrimination, safety issues are documented." Susan paled, gripping a seat. Amara continued, "Thank you to those who showed professionalism." The cabin erupted in murmurs. Susan stammered, "This is a mistake," but passengers countered. David said, "We saw the moldy food." Margaret added, "You ignored her safety concerns." Ryan waved his phone. "It's all recorded." The plane landed at Seattle-Tacoma, greeted by FAA vehicles and news vans. Captain Evans announced special deplaning. Inspector Johnson exits first. Amara stepped onto the jetway, met by Director Laura Bennett. 12 violations, including discrimination and safety breaches, Amara reported, handing over her notebook. Susan was escorted to a separate room, protesting, "This is a setup." Passengers, including Margaret, a retired judge, volunteered statements. Ryan shared his footage. David offered his legal team support. In a private room, Amara briefed Director Bennett. "This isn't just one attendant. The airline ignored complaints for years." Internal emails revealed 20 grievances against Susan, dismissed by HR. The airline's CEO, Richard Hayes, later agreed to overhaul training and complaint systems under FAA pressure. News broke globally, with Ryan's video viral at 5 million views. Amara, at her mother's gravy, a former aviation engineer wronged by prejudice, whispered, "The sky's fairer now, Mom." Months later, Amara led a new FAA unit, transforming airline standards. Susan worked at an airport gift shop, her career over. Emily joined the FAA, inspired by Amara. The industry shifted, with new laws bearing Amara's name. As she boarded another flight, Amara saw crews treat all passengers equally. Her mother's legacy lived on. What would you do if you saw someone treated unfairly on a flight? Should airlines face harsher penalties for ignoring discrimination? Would you speak up, even if it risked backlash? Share your thoughts, like, and subscribe for more stories of courage and change. Word count, 1,998 characters, including spaces.